Hi Steve, you asked me to put a record all about when we're building the motel in Cobar. Um, I have to start off at the very beginning, and this is the beginning. And you know this picture. This is your great grandfather Jack Parrington sitting on top of one of Neil Morrison's coaches. That's Jack, and I think that's Bill Heitzman there. I think he was your great grandfather's offsider on the horse on the Cobb and Co coach, or the coach that Morrison owned, and that's Neil Morrison there with his wife, and this was his house in Marshall Street, Cobar, the main street of Cobar, and it started life. This house started life as the central part there was used to be apparently was the first post office in Cobar, and this is the side of the motel, which you know. In later years, earlier years, the house was called Eureka. Later years, it became known as Mrs. Beaver's Flats because it had been turned into a number of flats. And when we bought it, it was pretty well run down. The flat over on the other side there, my grandmother lived in that flat when I was a little tiny tot, about before school. Many people in Cobar remember it as Mrs. Beaver's Flats. And when we pulled it down, just here, there was a well, and that well was, they'd been using that to store all their junk in, and it was nearly full of bottles when we pulled the house down. And what I had to do, it's right near room 1 on the Barrier Motel, or the motel, and we put a concrete lid over that well. So no doubt that well is chock-a-block full of old bottles going back to probably the 1800s. So that's the first part that I want to tell you. This laneway here was called Little Morrison, or Little something or other, and it might have been called Little Morrison Street, because Neil Morrison was the one that owned the house, and we bought that piece of land off the council to build a motel, and we bought the house on this side as well. Now Steve, this is that's the central part that I said that used to be the first post office in Cobar. That's you up on the roof when you were little. That's that entry area, and this is inside some of the rooms and at the place. I've got some more photos, just hold on, I'll get some more. That's you again there, Steve. That's Henry Wilson, my cousin. And this is when we were pulling it down. That's the Andy Hamilton's, his cat, where we're using that to knock the place down, and you can see it didn't last very long once we got the excavator, the tractor in, the bulldozer in to knock it down. We knocked it down very quick. Here's more photos. The bulldozer. That's a photo of Dad down the hole when we were starting to dig the foundations for the sewerage, and that's the plumber in Cobar, Billy, whatever his name was. I've got his name. This is as we're starting to get towards the end of it, knocking it down, that is. And this shot here is one where you can see where we're starting the brickwork. This is the first lot of units that we built. that well I was talking about is just about there under that front brick wall. We go to the next one. This is a bit more advanced. You can see we got to the point where we've got a lot of the roof on. And that looks like you and Kirsty, I think, in that picture there. This is a picture of Neil Morrison, who owned that house and who was one stage the mayor of Cobar. This is a picture of the reason why I put this here is because this is Catherine Williams, who was a hatcher, who's the mother of a lot of the people in Cobar, and Brucey Mott, who was a bricklayer and a really good friend of mine. He laid a lot of bricks on the house in Cobar. Oh, and that's my grandfather. Well, it's funny, my dad, this is before my dad was born. Okay, Steve, so now I need to tell you a little bit about the how we built the house and how we built the Barrier Motel and all that. This, you know this picture as well. This is Jack Parrington, and I got somebody to paint that painting taken from this photo. So now I need to go back now and tell you, like when I was young, at school and that I was very good at, I could pick things up really quickly, and my teacher in the woodworking class and tech drawing class used to say, he used to reckon that I maybe had done it before, but it wasn't really. All it was just that I was, for some reason I seemed to be good with my hands and I picked it up really easily. And right from very early days I was always in my mind all the time trying to think of ways to do good and make myself better. And so eventually I come to the conclusion that I wouldn't mind building a motel. And so Henry Wilson, my cousin in Cobar, he used to say to me, you know, oh, they desperately need a motel, a new motel in Cobar, you know, you should come back to Cobar and build a motel. So Gary Bannister, who was another mate of mine at school, he did an apprenticeship as a carpenter, and also Brucey Mott, Kelly Mott, who was actually our cousin from the Williams line. Kelly was a concreter and a bricklayer, and we'd been living in Sydney, and Kelly he'd been doing concreting and bricklaying, and Gary Bannister he'd been working for a building company, and so we almost started up a building company in Sydney. We come so close to it, which would have really went berserk because it was boom years those years. But in the meantime, we decided that we'd go back to Cobar to build a motel. So we went back, and I had to do a lot of swift talking to Dad and to your grandfather, Alf Barrington, to talk to them to see if they would help us get this motel going. And so we got Dad to take a share and also Alf to take a share in it. And then the little bit of money I had, we didn't have much money, a little bit of money I had, so we just sort of scraped enough together to buy that Mrs. Beaver's flats. And then we talked to Bill Brennan, who was the mayor of Cobar, and Bill owned that piece of ground at the back. And we decided, so we bought all that, and then we demolished Mrs. Beaver's flats, and then there was a old house sitting at the back of Brennan's, and that one there we jacked it all up and put it on under a truck. There's photos of that, and we drag that up to. Yeah, we jacked that house up, put it on wheels, and we took it up to Burke Road, and then Ray Wilson bought that house off us. So after that, all the site was nearly ready then for to start work. So we got Kelly. Kelly was he was living in Cobar at this time. I think he'd virtually come back just to do my job. And then we dug the foundations and we poured the footings, and some days, stinking hot days, I can remember, nearly passing out from the heat, from pouring the footings and doing all the slabs, and then Kelly had learned a little bit of bricklaying by this stage, and so we laid all the bricks. Kelly sort of taught me as I went along. And then I had a bloke come who did all the rendering inside, and he taught me how to render and do bathroom tiles. So, once he didn't know he was teaching me, but once I'd learned it, I didn't need him after that. So I did all the rendering and all the bathroom tiling myself once he'd showed me what to do. And then we had an office on the side of the old house, and then that became our office when we finished the first lot of 7 rooms, and then we opened, and it straight away it pretty well took off. And then after that, what I would do, I'd go to Brennan's, and I'd go to Ramian's Timber and Kenny Hamilton, and I'd ask for credit. And what I would do, I would start building the next block of units, rooms, and so I would get the rooms well on the way, because I was doing most of the work. I was building them for. You never build anything these days for the cost of what we were doing them for. I was doing them for so cheap. And there was no red tape like there is today. Today you'd be driven mad with red tape. But in those days, all you needed was a plan, which was supplied by Jim White, the Sydney architect. And then we just put it in the council, and then it was approved, and we just went for it. So I'd get half the next block of units done, maybe the walls up, and almost probably get the roof on. And then I'd go to the bank, and I'd say to the bank, we've got this this block of units here nearly ready. Can you lend me $20,000 so I can finish them off? So then the bank would lend the money. And then, even though it might have not have been enough money, it was enough for us to bluff our way through it all. And so that's what I kept on doing. I kept on adding rooms and building more, and we built it up to 31 rooms, I think we had. And then next door, the Shell service station, it caught fire and nearly burnt down, and so we eventually we bought that, and then by this stage, me and Jeanette were married then, and so all you children, we didn't want to rear all you kids in Cobar. We thought we'd give you a better chance somewhere outside Cobar. So we got up to 30 rooms, and we'd also built all the restaurant area and a whole new office area, all the same way, just by making a start and then going to the bank manager and badgering him into giving us the money to finish it all off. And then so we got to the point where we're sort of almost finished. We bought the Shell next door, and then we were at a meeting in Adelaide, and we had a person come there who gave us used to give us a motivational speaker, and he said, if you see something you want, stick it up on the wall, and then every day look at it and say, I'm going to have that. And so we were all fired up, me and Jeanette, and we said, all right. And Elaine had just come to work for us, Elaine Germain, and we came home from this conference and we said to Elaine, by Christmas you'll be running this place, and we'll have a high-rise hotel somewhere. And as a matter of fact, it sort of all came true, because by Christmas we'd actually gone, and I'd sent Jeanette into a bank in Sydney, and we told them we wanted to borrow 2.5 million, which is probably about equivalent to 10 million now. And the bank managers, they didn't know much, and they just lent us the money. So we came down here and we bought Fountainside in town. So now, one other thing that I probably need to tell you, the stairs in the main house, under the stairs there, I put a time capsule in there with a lot of local newspapers at the time, and papers for the building and plans and all that. So they're still under there. So one day, maybe 100 years' time, somebody might want to know about it. And the other thing too, today is the 5th of June 2016, and tomorrow is the 6th of June, and on the 6th of June 1916 was the year that Dad was born. So tomorrow, Dad was born 100 years ago. So that's just a little bit of a trivia for you. Hi, Steve. As part of the story, this is Dad, of course, you know. One thing about Dad, he always used to say to us when we were young, and I used to hear him say this to my cousins and to other people, other friends and that there in Cobar. He used to say, oh, I'd never be frightened to have a go. And like Ian Murphy, who was living at our house at one stage, Ian was looking to do things, and Dick Holmes and Dad used to always encourage him. That's what he used to say. Have a go. Don't be frightened to have a go. Yeah, no, that's okay. So it's funny. So Dad, that was something that I never forgot. But Dad was a gambler, which was such a shame, because Dad he'd start off gambling a little bit, and it would grow and grow and grow, and then he'd get to the point where he would get so far in that he couldn't get out, and he'd have to stop gambling, and he knew I was against all that. As I grew older, I didn't like him gambling, and we used to have a few disagreements about it all, because we sort of like a monkey on his back, and pretty well all his life it was something that sort of used to sort of keep him poor. Not poor, but he used to have to work really hard to get himself out of trouble. He'd blow his money, and then he'd have to work really hard to get it out of. But the positive side of it is he really encouraged us, and that's one thing that I never forgot, that I always, and even today, like the fact that we started up this computer business, and we built this Hatches Manor here in Richmond, and me and Jeanette, and Jeanette was just as bad as what I was, like when we were in Cobar and we were looking for the bloke suggested we look at buying a big motel and that. She was like a tiger. She was on the phone all the time and looking all over Australia and looking to buy a motel, and when she'd ring people up, she used to get a bit pissed off because they would, her being a woman, they used to sort of I was put it down a bit. But it was Jeanette who really found the Fountainside in Hobart, and but we were always really inspired for a lot of things that we did and ideas, and we were just always just having a go, and excited about doing new things, and 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 that's, I mean, who would start a computer business up at 65 years old? Not many people, and for it to be growing. But anyway, that's my old dad, and I love him and I miss him. And 100 years ago,